Real 911 Calls That Ended in Horror. Chapter 1. Introduction. People think dispatch work is quiet. They picture someone sipping coffee, answering the occasional fender bender, maybe a cat stuck in a tree. I used to think that too, before I took the headset for the first time and realized that quiet is just the sound a night makes right before it isn't quiet anymore. My name's Warrick Voss, and I've worked the overnight shift at the Callahan County Dispatch Center for 6 years. Population 41,000, mostly farmland and 2-lane highways, and a downtown that rolls up its sidewalks by 9. Not exactly the kind of place you'd expect anything worse than a drunk driving call or a barn fire. That's what I told myself when I started anyway. That's what kept me sane through the easy years. The dispatch room is small. 3 stations, humming fluorescent lights, the low chatter of scanners in the background, like insects you stop noticing after a while. I liked the night shift because it was mine. Marcus took days, Odalis took swing, and from 11 to 7, the building belonged to me and whoever else was unlucky enough to need help while the rest of the county slept. I'd taken thousands of calls by the time this started. Heart attacks, domestic disputes, a kid who locked himself in a bathroom and panicked. You learn to keep your voice level no matter what's coming through the line, because panic is contagious, and if you catch it, so does the person calling you. It was late September when the calls started feeling wrong, not the content of them. The content was ordinary enough. At first, it was something underneath, a texture to the silence between words. I remember mentioning it to Marcus during shift changeover, feeling stupid even as I said it. You ever get a call that just feels off? Like something's listening on the other end that isn't the caller? Marcus, who'd been doing this 12 years and had heard every kind of horror a phone line could carry, just shrugged into his jacket. Everybody feels that eventually. Burnout does weird things to your ears. I told myself he was right. I told myself a lot of things that October. The specific call that started it, the one I can still hear if I close my eyes and let myself, came in at 2:47 in the morning on the 9th. Caller ID showed a number from out on Route 9 past the old grain silos, an area with maybe 6 houses and more empty fields than people. I answered the way I always answered. 911, what's your emergency? There was breathing on the other end. Slow, measured, not panicked breathing. The opposite, actually, unnervingly calm. And beneath it, so faint I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Something that sounded like humming. Hello, this is 911, can you hear me? The breathing continued for exactly 11 seconds. I know because I checked the call log afterward. Obsessively, more times than I want to admit. Then the line went dead. I logged it as a possible pocket dial. That's what we do. That's what the training tells you to do. 90% of the time, it is a pocket dial, a phone jostled in someone's bag, a child playing with a parent's cell. But I sat there afterward with my hand still resting on the headset, staring at the little green light on my console, feeling the particular kind of cold that has nothing to do with the air conditioning. Something about that humming had sounded like it was humming at me, not randomly, like it knew I was listening. Chapter 2. Strange Events. The calls from that number kept coming, always between 2:30 and 3 a.m., always the same slow breathing, the same distant hum, the same dead silence. When I tried to get a response, I ran the address through our system. A farmhouse belonging to a family named Kessler. No priors, no history of trouble, nothing that explained a pattern like this. I tried calling the number back once, on my break, from my personal cell instead of the dispatch line. It rang 4 times, and then a woman answered, her voice thick with sleep and confusion. "Hello? Who is this?" "MAAM, this is Warrick Voss from Callahan County Dispatch. I'm following up on some calls that have come through from this number. In the early morning hours, we haven't called. 911. Her voice sharpened, fear creeping in fast. "Nobody in this house has touched the phone tonight. It's been sitting on the charger since 8 o'clock. I explained the timestamps, the dates, all 7 calls over 2 weeks. I could hear her breathing change on the other end, quicken. "There's no one else in the house," she said, very quietly. "It's just me and my husband and our son, and the phone's downstairs. Nobody's near it." I didn't sleep well that day. That became a pattern too, sleeping worse and worse, my body clock twisted sideways from working nights. But it was more than that. It was the specific quality of dread that builds when you can't explain something, and your brain keeps circling back to it anyway, worrying at it like a loose tooth. 2 nights later, another call came in from a completely different address, clear across the county. The Osgood place, a rental property near the reservoir. Same pattern, same slow, deliberate breathing. This time though, right before the line cut out, I heard a voice, a child's voice, very small, very far from the receiver, like it was speaking from another room entirely. "She's under the bed again." Then silence. Then the dial tone. I filed an incident report. My supervisor, a tired, practical man named Hendrickson, who'd seen every kind of strange thing this job could produce, read it over with a deepening frown. Could be kids messing around. Prank calls happen in clusters sometimes. Copycat behavior. 2 different houses, 2 different families. No connection between them that I can find. Same exact pattern of breathing. Same time window, give or take 20 minutes. I heard my own voice climbing higher than I meant it to. "Sir, I've been doing this 6 years. I know what a prank call sounds like. This isn't that." He looked at me for a long moment, and something in his face told me he wasn't as skeptical as he was pretending to be. "Keep logging them. If it escalates, we'll send a unit out to do a welfare check." It escalated 3 nights later. The call came from the Kessler farmhouse again, the first address, the one I'd called back myself. But this time there was no breathing, no humming. This time there was screaming, a woman's voice, raw and immediate, cut off after 4 seconds like someone had physically ripped the phone away from her. I had a patrol car dispatched within 90 seconds. I stayed on the line the entire time, listening to nothing. An open channel filled with a silence so total it felt like pressure against my eardrums. The kind of silence that isn't the absence of sound, but the presence of something holding its breath. The officers arrived to find the house dark, the front door unlocked, and every member of the Kessler family present and accounted for, asleep in their beds, utterly unaware that anyone had called for help at all. Chapter 3, Darkness Grows. Hendrickson pulled the recordings after that. All of them, going back through every strange call from every address, and we sat together in the small back office listening to them on a loop, trying to find the thread that connected these households. That was when we found the detail that made the hair stand up on my arms Every single address that had generated one of these calls had, at some point in the last 30 years, been visited by the same set of first responders. Not the same department across all of them. The county had reorganized twice. Personnel had shifted, but there was one name that appeared again and again, buried in old incident logs. Deputy Warrick Voss. My grandfather. I hadn't thought about him in years. He died when I was 19, a heart attack in his own driveway, and the family didn't talk about him much. There'd always been something unspoken and heavy whenever his name came up at holidays. Adults exchanging glances over my head, conversations redirected with the particular smoothness that comes from long practice. I pulled his personnel file the next day, technically against protocol, using an access code I probably shouldn't have still had from a training rotation years back. Most of it was unremarkable. Traffic stops, domestic calls, standard rural policing. But there was a case file from 1994 that made my stomach drop when I opened it. A house fire out on Route 9, the same stretch of road as the Kessler place, maybe half a mile down. A family of 4. The report was sparse, clinical, the kind of language departments use to keep tragedy at arm's length. Structure fire, cause undetermined, 4 fatalities. First responding officer Deputy W. Voss. Attached to the file, tucked in an evidence sleeve that had clearly been resealed at some point, was a single black and white photograph. A farmhouse engulfed in flame, smoke pouring black against a night sky, and in the corner of the frame, barely visible, a small, pale shape standing at the edge of the tree line, watching the fire burn. I couldn't make out a face, just a shape, just the suggestion of someone standing very still while a house and everyone in it burned down 30 feet away. I showed it to Hendrickson. He went quiet in a way I'd never seen from him before, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. I remember hearing about this one, he finally said. Before your grandfather passed, he used to talk about it sometimes, late nights, when he'd had a few beers. Said there was a kid unaccounted for, 5th member of the family, a daughter. Nobody ever found a body. He always said. Hendrickson stopped himself. Said what? Said he still heard her sometimes, on calls, late at night. Said it wasn't the job that broke him, it was her. That night, at 2:51 in the morning, my own phone rang, not the dispatch line, my personal cell, sitting on the console beside my coffee, the screen lighting up with a number I recognized instantly. The Kessler farmhouse. I answered with my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Hello? Breathing, slow, patient, and then so quiet I had to press the phone hard against my ear to catch it. A small voice, sing-song, almost sweet. Grandpa promised he'd come get me. He never came. Chapter 4. Terror. I didn't sleep at all after that call. I sat in the dispatch room until my shift ended at 7, staring at my phone like it might ring again, feeling watched by something I couldn't locate, couldn't name, couldn't explain to anyone, without sounding like I'd lost my mind. I told Odalise when she came in for swing shift that I wasn't feeling well. It wasn't a lie, exactly. My skin felt too tight. My thoughts kept skittering sideways whenever I tried to focus on anything. The calls didn't stop. They got worse. 2 nights later, a call came in from a payphone, an actual payphone, one of maybe 3 left in the entire county, sitting outside a shuttered gas station on Route 9. less than a mile from where that farmhouse had burned in 1994. Payphones don't call 911 by accident. Someone has to physically be there, has to lift the receiver, has to dial. I answered it myself. I don't know why. I could have let another dispatcher take it, but something pulled me toward that console like a hand on the back of my neck. 911, what's your emergency? The voice that answered wasn't the small, sweet, sing-song voice from before. This one was different, older, rougher, dragged through gravel, and it spoke slowly, like it was savoring each word. You found the picture. My hands went cold on the keyboard. Who is this? Your grandfather saw me too. He stood right where I'm standing, and he watched the house burn, and he didn't come inside. Not for me. Not for any of us. A long pause, filled with something that might have been static or might have been breathing. I genuinely couldn't tell. He made promises. Everybody makes promises when the fire's already started and it's too late to keep them. I don't understand what you want. I want someone to come get me. That's all I ever wanted. The voice shifted again, cracking suddenly into that same small child's register from before, jarring in its speed, like two different people trading places inside the same throat. He said he'd come back. He said, wait, right here. I waited so long. The line went dead. I sat there in the dispatch room, alone except for Marcus, 2 consoles down, absorbed in his own call, utterly unaware of what had just happened 3 feet away from him. I felt the particular horror of being the only witness to something, the isolating terror of knowing that if I told anyone the full truth, they'd think I'd cracked under the pressure of the job the way dispatchers sometimes do. I drove out to Route 9 that morning, instead of going home. I don't know what I expected to find. The old grain silos stood exactly where they always had, rust-streaked and silent against a gray sky. Half a mile down, where the file said the fire had happened, there was nothing but an empty lot grown over with weeds. No foundation visible, no marker, nothing to indicate that 4 people had died there, and a 5th had simply vanished into the dark. I stood at the edge of that lot for a long time, the cold October wind cutting through my jacket, and I felt it. The same sensation from the phone calls, the same feeling of being watched by something patient, something that had been waiting a very long time and had finally found the thread that led back to it. Behind me, from the tree line, I heard humming, the same tune from the very first call. I didn't turn around. I got in my car and drove straight to Hendrickson's office. Chapter 5. The Truth. Hendrickson had done some digging of his own while I was gone, and what he'd found filled in the last, worst piece of the picture. The fire in 1994 hadn't been an accident. The investigation had quietly concluded that, though it never made the papers, never made it into any public record beyond a single line buried in an old case file, accelerant present, point of origin consistent with intentional ignition, suspect deceased, case closed. The father had done it. Some kind of breakdown, the kind that never announces itself until it's too late for anyone to stop it, and he'd locked the doors and set the house alight with his wife and 2 sons still inside, along with himself. The daughter, 9 years old, name listed only as Kay Renner in the sparse notes, had been the one who got out. She'd run to a neighbor's house, hysterical, barefoot, badly burned along one arm, and my grandfather had been the first officer on scene. According to the notes Hendrickson found, tucked in an old evidence log that had never been properly digitized. My grandfather had told the girl to wait at the edge of the property while he went inside to search for survivors. He'd promised he'd come right back for her. He never did. In the chaos of the fire, the arriving fire crews, the collapsing structure, somebody lost track of a traumatized 9-year-old girl standing alone in the dark at the edge of a burning house. By the time anyone thought to look for her again, she was simply gone. No trace, no body. The case was quietly folded into the larger tragedy and closed. And my grandfather carried that unfulfilled promise with him for the rest of his life, drinking it down late at night, telling half versions of it to a granddaughter too young to understand what she was hearing. "She's not haunting the houses," I said, understanding arriving all at once, cold and complete. "She's haunting the promise. She's been waiting for someone to come back for her for 30 years. And every family in every house near that road has been close enough for her to reach toward, hoping one of them was finally him." Hendrickson's face had gone gray. "And now she's found you. His blood. She thinks I can finish what he started." My voice came out barely above a whisper. "She thinks I can come get her." That night, my phone rang at 2:47 exactly. I didn't answer it right away. I let it ring 4 times, 5, staring at the screen, at the number I now recognized instantly. The payphone outside the gas station, half a mile from where a 9-year-old girl had waited alone in the dark for a rescue that never came. Finally, I answered. "I'm coming," I said, before she could say anything at all. "I'm coming to get you." Chapter 6, Final Nightmare. I drove out to Route 9 alone, against every ounce of training and common sense I had. The headlights cutting a narrow tunnel through a darkness that felt thicker than it should have, pressing in against the windows, like something with weight and intention. The empty lot looked different at night, wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. The weeds seemed taller, the air colder, and as I stepped out of my car onto the cracked, weed-choked ground, I heard humming rising up from the tree line. Closer now, closer than it had ever been. "I'm here," I called out, my voice shaking despite everything I did to steady it. "I came, like I promised." The humming stopped. She stepped out from between the trees slowly, and even now, describing it, I feel that same cold drop in my stomach. She looked exactly 9 years old, exactly as she must have looked the night the fire took everyone she loved, down to the burned patch along her left arm, down to the bare feet, down to the wide, dark, patient eyes that had been waiting 3 decades for someone to finally keep a promise made in the worst moment of her life. "You came back," she said, and her voice held something I hadn't expected. Not menace, not hunger, but a raw, aching hope so pure it was almost worse than fear. "I'm here now," I said, and I meant it. Every word, standing in that field with tears freezing on my face in the October cold. "I'm sorry it took so long. I'm so sorry," she smiled, and for one moment, one single, suspended moment, the field felt warm again. The wind stopped, and something in the air lifted, like a held breath finally released after 30 years. Then she reached out her small burned hand and closed it around mine, and her fingers were cold, so cold it burned, cold enough that I gasped aloud and couldn't pull away even as every instinct screamed at me to run. "Now you can't leave either," she said, still smiling, her voice layering into something older, something with 3 decades of waiting curdled inside it. "That's how it works. Somebody always has to stay behind and wait for the next one." The last thing I clearly remember is the field going dark, all at once, like a switch thrown somewhere far beyond my reach. They found my car the next morning, parked and empty on the shoulder of Route 9, engine still running, driver's door hanging open. They never found me. The case is still open, technically, filed alongside a decades-old arson investigation nobody in the department likes to discuss. Sometimes, they tell me, new dispatchers at Callahan County still get calls from that stretch of road, late at night, always around 2:47. Slow, patient breathing, faint humming, and now, if you listen closely enough beneath it, two voices instead of one, a child's and a woman's, humming the same tune together in a darkness that never quite lifts.